Of course, the Hollywood goddesses were just as wonderful. There's the great Marilyn. When she first got into the studio system, she sent round the various producers and directors with a note, and she wondered for a long time why it was that after the gentleman had opened the note, read it and put it back in the envelope, he would come out from behind his desk with his flies undone. The great queen of the casting council, of course, was Joan Crawford, who early in her career appeared in lots of stag movies, and she always showed herself naked to the director before the movie, saying that he must know what he was dealing with. Even at the very end of her career, she flashed at the young Steven Spielberg. A particular favourite of mine is the great Dorothy Dandridge, who was the first movie star of colour, I guess. She had played very prim and proper school marm types, but she wanted the part in Carmen Jones. And when Otto Preminger said he wouldn't give it to her, it wasn't her image, she returned to his office with a very short skirt, wearing no panties, and bent over his desk. She got the part. At this point, the original publisher went bust and was bought up by Carlton Books in London, and they noticed that the Hollywood books sold particularly well to gays. So they decided that I should do sex lives of famous gays, which I write for money. I do what I'm told. But you find out terrible things that like Oscar Wilde is seen as a saint among gay people. In fact, when you read about what he got up to, these days he would have spent a lot longer in jail and he'd be on the sexual offenders register. He was basically a paedophile. The love that dare not speak its name actually wasn't his line at all, but his love of those is. And what they did, they were thrown out of the Savoy Hotel in London because they had adjoining rooms and they were swapping 9-year-old boys between each other. Not a very pleasant story at all. However, I will never hear anything bad said against the great Noel Coward, who appears in several of the Sex Lives books. He appears in the Kings and Queens of England book because at the abdication crisis, Winston Churchill, who was a great supporter of Edward VIII, said, "I don't see why the king can't have his sweetie." And Noel, having his finger on the pulse, said, "Because the English people will not put up with Queen's sweetie." He was a very immensely kind man and generous to a fault. But the lovely story is once he was trying to seduce Kenneth More, of all people, the young Kenneth More, and he got him back to his house in Barnes for dinner. And after dinner, Noel turned the lights down and went over to the piano and played a few of his tunes, and then advanced on Kenneth More, who leapt from his chair and said, "No, no, no, you remind me of my father." And Noel Coward said, "Hello, son." And then, of course, we had to balance things out. We had to do Sex Lives of the Famous Lesbians. There's this terrific girl-on-girl action. Who was then ever into that? Unfortunately, it points out for our lesbian sisters out there that Sappho of Lesbos actually committed suicide over a man, a foreign man who was a lover. And the great apostle of lesbianism in the 20th century, Radcliffe Hall, was a bit of a fraud. She claimed that lesbians were the great oppressed of the world, though she was immensely wealthy and spent most of her time on holiday with titled ladies. Her great book, The Well of Loneliness, which was always claimed was suppressed, wasn't. It was the whole thing was contrived by her publisher, who withdrew it simply so he could sell illicit copies. In fact, they set up a stall outside the Gare du Nord in Paris so people could get what they thought was this banned book, but it wasn't banned at all.